let's get started. Do you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Sure. I am Louis Raymond-Kolker, and I just now see that my UNL connected Zoom says Louis Kolker. I am now on the Zoom Louis Raymond-Kolker. I just graduated from UNL with my master's degree, and I'm still using their Zoom.
Well, I'm Jonah Payne. Just finished my third year doing percussion performance.
Louis, you've been doing a lot of stuff, at least online, it looks like, since the pandemic and everything has started. What's keeping you motivated to actually still continue to do these things?
I think in terms of motivation, it's because otherwise I don't have anything else to do. Like, days are long. I just got done with being in school from, 8 or 9 or 10 a.m. until 8 or 9 or 10 p.m. every day. So just like finding ways to fill the hours that are meaningful and not just like binge watching Netflix.
That's cool. So what kind of projects then have you been working on since quarantine started?
Okay. So the first thing I had to do was finish my degree and give a master's degree recital. The way that I designed my last recital at UNL was going to be all of the things that I didn't have access to after graduating. So I was doing a marimba quartet, a long marimba solo, 2 multi-percussion solos, all the stuff that I knew that I wouldn't be able to do when I was outside of the building, and that turned out to be true. So in March, I started reconfiguring a master's recital that I could just do on steel pans and record from my apartment. I wound up commissioning a piece from Kimberly Osberg, who I just saw on Twitter that she was doing micro commissions of pieces that were under 1 minute, 1 to 2 minutes, or 2 to 3 minutes. And so I was the second person to sign up for that. The first one was Jonathan Anderson, also from the UNL Percussion Studio. But I joined that for a double second solo, and I started learning that. I worked up some pieces that I had and hadn't played in a while, like Ocean Church by Jonathan Scales, Wildflower by CJ Mengi, and then also was planning to record Internal Dialogue by Alexis Lamb, and so I recorded that for my recital and also sent in a portfolio of a few existing videos that I had. I was also doing a ton of research and writing on steel pan, so writing about kind of idiomatic writing for the instruments, common problems that composers might face. Sapphire, this is probably something that you've thought about. How some things work really naturally and some things you feel like should be easy and are way harder than they should be on the instruments. So putting together a document to help composers and also accompanying exercises to help performers work through those same idiomatic challenges. And then since the recital and finishing my degree, I played a concert last week with CJ Mengi from Inside Out Steel Band and Blue Iron duo Morgan Tao and Diana Loomer, who are in, I think, Asheville right now. But kind of a variety show of new music for steel pan. There were just in the last few days, I've been really cracking down on writing more because I have some projects that are due pretty soon.
And then I'm sure this is a question you get asked all the time because steel pan is kind of synonymous with your name now. Why steel pan of all the instruments to associate yourself with?
I don't know. So I went to a high school. I was really lucky to go to McCallum High School in Austin, where they had a pretty incredible steel pan program. And so when I went to school there, not only was playing in the steel band a normal part of the percussion experience, it wasn't part of the band class at all. We had very little overlap between band and steel band on paper. But our percussion teacher was like, you're a percussionist. There's a class on a percussion instrument. Why wouldn't you take it? And I just really liked being in that environment. I think in terms of personality, even in new music or classical music settings, I don't like how buttoned up it can feel and how stressful it can be to be the one percussionist on a part, and you sit and wait 30 measures for your one cymbal crash, and if you miss it, then everyone knows. Whereas in steel band, it's generally more fun music. You get to play in a section, you get to play next to 2 or 3 or even like 5 or 6 people who are playing your same part, which is something that I never experienced anywhere else. And so I just enjoyed it, and at the same time took it seriously. I played marimba solos, I played snare drum solos, I played timpani solos, I played pan solos. And after just a few years of that, I found myself running out of rep to play on pan. So I started commissioning things to be able to play, started writing things to play myself, and that just kind of evolved into what I like to do.
Yeah, that's as good a reason as any.
Yeah, and I just like the instrument. I mean, I really like metallophones, and I like the way that metal tricks your ear. And I feel like there's kind of a shortage of good keyboard metallophones in the percussion world. Glock and Crotali are really high. Vibes are a good kind of neutral middle register, but the pedal can be difficult to work with, both as a performer and as a composer, trying to write naturally for the instrument. But steel pans have a similar decay to like a marimba, so it feels like a comfortable analog in that regard, just laid out differently.
Next project, build your ideal metallophone.
I'm gonna leave that to the professionals.
So do you see yourself continuing to, be very well rounded, or do you see yourself maybe focusing more on steel pans, given that you won't have access to obviously a lot of instruments that you had at UNL?
I mean, in my ideal world, I would have the money to buy a 5-octave marimba and to buy a vibraphone, and buy a set of timpani. And that itself, I think, is a $30,000 bill. So I will not be doing that, but hopefully, I'm thinking about my options in pursuing a doctoral degree. I'm thinking about my options in teaching. So I do plan to be around instruments, at least until I can maybe buy a vibe or something. Being in a place where I can play percussion instruments and continue to explore and write and practice on these instruments. I think pan is going to continue to be a specialty just because I'm so plugged into the pan community and I have no reason to leave. But I do really like playing all of the instruments.
Just how do you go about balancing practice between all these different instruments?
That's a really good question. I'm still working on it a little bit for myself. One of the things that I like is productive procrastination. For example, last week I had that concert on Friday and I had 4 pieces that I was practicing for it. And if I was stuck on one piece mentally, then I would just pop to another piece, or I would come to my desk and I would write. Just being able to occupy my time productively, realize when I'm not doing anything, and immediately pivot is really helpful. The other thing is just knowing what I'm expected to do, when I'm expected to do it. When I got the call to play that LSO gig to accompany you, and I saw that I was playing eighth note crashes at 160 or however fast you were going, I decided, all right, next 5 days, we're doing crash cymbals every single day just to brush up. So I think part of it is having the foundation on all of these instruments, and knowing what your practice regimen is going to be if at the last minute you need to just like get in the shed and work on that instrument and get your chops back up.
So kind of on that same end, how did you find yourself balancing this life between being a composer and a performer, and of course then the composer performer?
I don't really know that I'm ever a composer performer unless I'm actively playing one of my pieces. I feel like it either goes by the week or the month or even the day. Today, this week I have to be a composer. I have to finish this marimba solo. Last week I had to be a performer, and I had to get those pieces put together. Last semester, when we played at PASIC, I was a pretty good composer performer for about a month or two, and then I had to jump in and sub for orchestra tour, and I was a performer for that week. And then at the end of that week, I was playing in the opera pit, so I was a performer for that week. And then it was getting ready for PASIC, and so I was a performer for the next month. And then after that, I just kind of hung up the performer side of it for a while, and I, started leaving school at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and going to write because I knew that if I hung around, I would get pulled into practicing. One of my goals for the summer is to write some more large ensemble music.
Do you think the direction of that and how you're going about it is going to be different now that you're going to be kind of away from academia?
I think so. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life over the next year, where I can be, where I can work. I'm sure that it will be different. I think maybe you're better than this, Sapphire, but my experience was that I was extremely motivated by deadlines. So if I had a lesson with Dr. Simon, or if I had a due date for a piece, then that was usually a better motivator for me than just the desire in itself to write. I'm really, really good at aspirational writing, but I'm definitely more aspirational than I am writing at that point. So I do kind of worry about the lack of deadlines coming out of academia, and I think I just need to self-structure more, and that's something I've been working on the last couple months.
So that's one thing that I've noticed that's really unique about your online presence compared to a lot of other musicians is that you are constantly connected both professionally and personally to the online world, and you're super active in, like you said, the steel pan community and everything else. How have you gone about building up this profile, and do you consider it to be any form of marketing?
I don't know. I feel like marketing can be a dirty word, because I think it can be disingenuous with some people, or the way that some people do it. Um, I kind of equate it to, the meme of the dog who's sitting at a computer and it says like, when you lied on your resume and got the job.
Yes.
I feel like some people market in that way, where they put up a big profile, they write themselves a fancy bio, and then they just are not the person that they purport to be. So that's the thing that I'm always really aware of. I just post videos of myself playing, and I put hashtags on it that make sense to me. If I'm playing steel pan new music, I usually put hashtag steel pan and hashtag new music. And if I miss a note, I put hashtag practice. And I think that's a good way of getting attention in a way that is honest. And the other thing is, like, if someone doesn't want to follow me or doesn't like something that I post, I don't let that drive what I do post. I just figure that they're not going to be in my fan base for the long term, and so I don't worry about trying to catch people like that. I remember last summer I was listening to Thank You Next. I had heard it like 3 times in 1 week. Just the thing where, like, I was at my cousin's wedding and the DJ played it, and then I was in a grocery store a few days later and it was playing over the speakers, and then I was driving home and it was on the radio. And so I had this song stuck in my head, and I was like, I'm going to figure out this chord progression. I'm going to make a little arrangement, and then I'll be done with it. And that post, like, relative to everything else that I posted, blew up. It got way more attention than like the concerto that I spent a full year on. And so that was a little frustrating for me. And then I was like, well, it doesn't matter. I like the concerto more than I like the 5 minutes that I spent to do this. So I think it's good to be aware of what people are interested in, but I'm still not letting that drive what I'm doing.
aside from begrudgingly listening to top 40 radio once in a while, how would you describe your creative process?
Oh, I don't really know if I have a creative process. I think that I just play until I find something that I like, or I write until I find something that I like. I just did this marimba solo, and I was really convinced that it was going to be kind of these recollections, like trying to misremember a melody or like catch that feeling of having a melody stuck in your head and not quite getting it. And so I figured that the way I was going to do that was I had a melody in mind of um, the Suite for Toy Piano by John Cage.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, all right, from here for the next few days while I'm writing, I'm just not going to listen to this piece. I'm not going to look at the score. I'm going to actively misremember it and write about it. And I did that, and I wrote kind of a first draft of like sketched maybe a minute of music. And then the next day I did it again and I sketched a different minute. And by that point I was just like, I don't really like this. And so from there I just tossed the whole thing and decided to write miniatures. And I think I sketched out 4 of the 5 miniatures that I wanted to do. The first one I kind of liked. The second one I liked a lot. The third one I liked a lot. The fourth one I liked. I figured out a way to tie the fourth one back to the second one. I cut out the fifth one. I cut out the first one. And now it's a triptych. So I think part of it is just like writing way more than I like, or writing more than I plan to use, and then finding the connections and just being able to discern what works for me and what doesn't. I could tell just like from the first one that I wasn't really psyched about it. And as I was writing it, I kind of trailed off and I was like, let's see what the next one is.
Something I was just going to ask, since we've been focusing on music the whole time, I was just going to ask what kind of things you've been doing that are just unrelated to music. I know you mentioned obviously podcasts and books.
Lots of Legos on Instagram.
Yeah. Where are my Star Wars Legos? I think they're like, yeah, they're right here. And this is, I'm not changing this. I'm just going to pick it up as is. I have the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan, and I promise Anakin was just knocked over. And I saw this at my desk yesterday, and I'm pretty sure they've been doing the Toy Story thing of like, they've been fighting each other when I'm not looking. So, I mean, Anakin still has like most of his skin on, but I guess you can't remove that in a Lego.
Thank you guys so much for joining me today. It was a lot of fun and went surprisingly fast. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I don't. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for joining me. Have a good one.
See you.
See you guys.
See you.